She didn't drop the coffee pot by accident. Her hands just stopped. Completely. Like every nerve in her body got the same message at the same exact second, and the message was him. 8 months pregnant, feet so swollen she'd cut slits in her shoes to fit them, back aching since 4 o'clock that afternoon, and now standing under the flickering light of the worst diner in the city at 9:45 at night, Sophia Marlowe was looking at the one person on earth she had spent 7 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days making sure she would never have to look at again. Dante Ricci. He wasn't looking at her face, he was looking at her stomach. And she actually stood there and watched the most feared man in the city lose every ounce of color in his face in under 3 seconds. The coffee pot hit the floor. He said 3 words, just 3, barely a sound. Is that mine? If this story already has your stomach in knots, subscribe right now. Hit that bell and drop your city in the comments. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. Now let's go. Lou's diner had been broken for 40 years, and nobody had ever cared enough to fix it. The neon sign missing its first letter, the booths patched with electrical tape, the coffee always slightly burnt. Sophia Marlowe fit right in, not because she was broken, but because she had learned to function without being whole, and Lou's was a place that respected that arrangement. She moved between tables the way she did every night, efficient, automatic, invisible. Order pad, coffee pot, refill, check, repeat. She had turned herself into a machine over the last 7 months because machines don't think about what they left behind. Machines don't lie awake at 3 in the morning with one hand on their stomach, wondering if they made the right choice. Machines just move. Table 4 has been waiting 10 minutes, said Deb, appearing from behind the counter, the way Deb always appeared, sudden, loud, and right. Deb was 62 years old with the voice of a woman who had outlasted 3 marriages, 1 hurricane, and a business partner who tried to steal her savings. She looked at Sophia the way you look at someone standing too close to a ledge. And before you say you're fine, your ankles look like grapefruit. They're fine, baby girl. They are fine, Deb. Sophia grabbed the coffee pot and moved toward table 4 without looking back. I have 4 hours left in this shift, and I need you to let me finish them. You nearly passed out in the parking lot yesterday. I didn't nearly pass out. I got dizzy. Same thing. It really isn't. She set the check on table 4, smiled at the couple who didn't look up, turned back toward the counter, reached for the coffee pot. The bell above the door rang. She didn't look up. She hadn't looked up when a door opened in 7 months. Looking up meant hoping, and she'd performed surgery on hope, removed. It cleanly cauterized the wound, moved on. She poured the coffee, she turned around, and the entire architecture of the last 7 months cracked straight down the middle. He was in the doorway, all 6'2" of him, coat that cost more than her rent, dark hair, slightly longer than she remembered, those eyes that had always found her in any room, like she was the only fixed point in it, finding her now, immediately the way they always did. But they didn't stay on her face. They dropped. And she watched Dante Ricci, who had never once in all the years she'd known him, looked afraid of anything, not rivals, not law enforcement, not the men who had come for him in the night. More than once she watched him look at her stomach and go absolutely, completely white. The coffee pot slipped. It didn't shatter because her hands failed. It shattered because every muscle in her body received a single urgent signal simultaneously, and the signal had nothing to do with holding things. The crash was enormous in the quiet diner. Nobody moved. Dante moved. 1 step forward, then stopped himself, jaw locked the way he locked it when he was physically restraining an instinct. She knew that jaw. She knew every controlled expression he owned and the exact thing underneath each one. Sophia. His voice. God. She had needed it to sound different. She had prayed for it lower, colder, foreign to her, anything that would make this easier. It sounded exactly the same, dark and low and certain, like distant thunder that has already decided where it's going to land. She said nothing. Her throat had a fist in it. Is that? He stopped, looked at her stomach again. When he spoke the second time, his voice had broken in a place she had never heard it break before. Is that mine? Deb materialized between them like a woman built for exactly this moment. Sir, this is a place of business, and you need to step back right now. Sophia. He didn't look at Deb. He looked at her like Deb was furniture, like the entire diner was furniture, like there was nothing in the physical world except the distance between him and her and whatever was in her stomach. Answer me. I don't owe you answers. The words came out quieter than she needed them to. She'd wanted steel. She got paper. You need to leave. I'm not leaving. This is not your place. How long have you known? Not a question. A wall he'd just walked through. Leave, Dante. How long have you been pregnant? And how long have you been hiding it from me? He stepped forward and she stepped back and her lower back hit the counter edge and she stopped. And he stopped, 2 feet between them now less, and she could see the full damage on his face. The shock, the fury, the thing underneath the fury that was so much more dangerous than either. 7 months, Sophia. I have been looking for you for 7 months. I wasn't hiding from you. Her voice cracked and she hated herself for it. I left. There's a difference. You were already pregnant when you left. She said nothing. Her silence was its own answer. You knew. He pressed his hand flat against his chest. One of those involuntary gestures, the body reacting before the mind can manage it. You already knew, and you left anyway, and you didn't. He stopped. You didn't tell me. Because I made a decision about my daughter's life. She lifted her chin. And I stand by it. The word detonated in the room. Daughter. She saw it hit him. Watched it travel from his ears down through the length of him, the way a tremor travels through the ground after the earthquake has technically already stopped. A girl, he said. She looked away. You didn't hear that. Sophia. He said her name like a wound, like something he'd been holding tightly for 7 months and it had worn through his hands. Look at me. She didn't. Please. That word from Dante Ricci, please. She could count on one hand the number of times she'd heard it and still have fingers left. She looked. Tell me why, he said. And all the power and the certainty and the 38 years of commanding every room he'd ever entered were completely, entirely gone from his voice. Not the answer you rehearsed. The real reason. Her jaw tightened so hard her teeth ached. You want the real reason. Yes. The real reason is that I stood in a hospital hallway for 6 hours while the doctors told me they couldn't save Marco. Her voice did not break this time. It had gone somewhere past breaking, somewhere flat and absolute and final. 6 hours, Dante, and you sent a man with an envelope of cash. You did not come. The room was completely silent. I know, he said. My cousin. The word came out like a stone. 26 years old. Dead because he was close to me and I was close to you and your world doesn't give back what it takes. She pressed her hand against her side, Arya rolling underneath her palm. Restless, aware somehow of everything. I decided my daughter was not going to understand that from birth. That is the real reason. He looked at her hand against her stomach. Something in his face collapsed. Not dramatically, it was almost quiet, the collapse. Like a building that falls from the inside the facade, staying up just long enough that by the time you realize it's happening, it's already done. What is she going to be named? He asked. Barely sound. That is not your information yet. Sophia, it is not your information yet, she repeated. Steady, absolute. Deb stepped forward. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you one more time, Deb. Sophia touched her arm. Give us 2 minutes. Deb looked at her with an expression that said she thought this was approximately the worst idea she'd ever witnessed. Then she stepped back. I'm 4 feet away, she said. I want that very clear. Dante did not take his eyes off Sophia. Come sit down. You need to be off your feet. You don't get to tell me what I need. How long is your shift? None of your business. You've been on your feet since when? 4-5. Since 4. It came out before she caught it. She watched satisfaction flicker across his face, not cruel, just the particular recognition of a man who had always known exactly how to ask a question to get an answer. 6 hours, he said, on your feet, 8 months along, in here. He stopped himself from whatever he was going to say about Lou's diner. She saw the effort. I'll wait outside until you're done. Don't. I'll be outside. Like it was already decided. That was the thing, the infuriating, inescapable thing about Dante Ricci. He didn't argue, he decided, and then he simply waited for the world to catch up with what he'd already decided. She had loved that quality once. She had also run from it across 3 states. Her name, he said very quietly, stepping back toward the door. It's something I'll wait for you to tell me when you're ready. But Sophia, he stopped with his hand on the door. I am not going away. Not again. Not ever again. He looked at her one more time, at her face, at her stomach, at her hand still pressed against her side. Whatever that makes me in your eyes right now, I need you to know it. The bell rang. He was gone. Deb was at her side before the sound had faded. Baby girl, who is that man? Sophia picked up the order pad from the counter, clicked the pen, stared at it without seeing anything written on it. He's the father, she said quietly. Deb was silent for a long moment. I figured. Another moment. You okay? No. She straightened her back against the ache. But that's not new. She went back to work. At 11:58, the door opened. Again. She heard his footsteps. She had always known his footsteps and turned around before he'd crossed the threshold. He was carrying food, Thai from the place 3 blocks over. The good one. He set it on the counter without a word and sat down 2 stools away at a careful and deliberate distance. You need to eat, he said. You can't just... I know. He looked at her directly. I know I can't. I know I don't have standing to walk in here and say anything to you. I know I don't have rights to this situation yet. But you haven't eaten, and she needs you to eat, and I am asking you, not telling you, please eat something. She stared at the bag. Her stomach growled, loud enough that Deb 4 feet away definitely heard it. She pulled the bag toward her and opened it. The smell of lemongrass hit her, and her body reacted with the complete shameless urgency of a pregnant woman who hadn't eaten since 2 in the afternoon. From 2 stools away, she heard something she had not heard in over a year. Dante laughed, quietly, almost under his breath, like it had gotten out before he could stop it. A short, genuine, completely unmanufactured sound of something that might in a different life have been called joy. Don't, she said. I didn't say anything. You were about to. I was thinking that our daughter already has very strong opinions. He met her eyes. She gets that from her mother. She stopped unwrapping the container, looked at him. At the careful 2-stool distance he was maintaining, at the deliberate absence of strategy on his face. Her name is Arya, she said. She didn't plan it. It left her mouth the way the word daughter had left her mouth earlier, before the wall could catch it. For the part of her that was still furious and still grieving and still right about all of it could get there in time. Dante closed his eyes. She watched the most powerful and dangerous man she had ever known sit on a diner stool and close his eyes and breathe like a man who has just been handed something he didn't know how to hold. Arya, he said, don't make it into something. Sophia, he opened his eyes. It already is something. It has been something since before either of us decided to acknowledge it. He put his hand on the counter between them, not reaching for her, just placing it there, open, visible, available. What do I have to do? Tell me, whatever it is, any condition, I will meet it. She ate 3 bites of pad thai while she thought about that. Then she said, start by leaving tonight and letting me think. He nodded, stood, put his coat back on. Arya, he said one more time at the door. Just the name, just the sound of it in his mouth, like something he intended to carry for the rest of his life. He left. Sophia looked out the cracked window. The black car across the street did not move. She pressed her hand to her stomach and closed her eyes and felt Arya move steady and certain and absolutely her own, and she let herself feel everything she'd been refusing to feel for 7 months. The fury, the grief, the terrifying, persistent, completely inconvenient truth that sitting 2 stools away from Dante Ricci had felt despite everything, like the first time in a long time that the room had enough oxygen in it. She hated that. She sat with it anyway. Because she had learned the hard way, the only way anything real is ever learned, that the things you refuse to feel don't go away. They just go underground. And eventually they come back up. She moved into the Mercer Street apartment the next afternoon. She told herself it was practical. Heat security doorman named Curtis, who nodded at her like she was someone worth nodding at. She told herself it had nothing to do with the key on the kitchen table or the handwriting on the note underneath it. She told herself these things knowing they were half true and half something she wasn't ready to name. Dante called at 7:15 the next morning. She answered on the second ring, which she was immediately annoyed about. I want to know about the doctor's appointment Thursday, he said. No, good morning. Dante Ricci had never once in his life opened a phone call with pleasantries. I haven't invited you to that appointment. I know. Then why are you asking about it? Because I want to be there. A pause. I want to ask you. I'm not telling you, I'm asking if I can be there. She sat with that for a moment. Outside, the city was already moving car horns and the distant sound of a garbage truck. The ordinary sounds of a morning that she'd woken up in a warm apartment for the first time in months. 10 o'clock, she said. You walk behind me. You don't touch anything. You don't speak to the doctor unless I specifically say it's okay. You don't make a single decision without asking me first. Agreed, all of it. You agreed too fast. Sophia. She could hear the edge of something almost like a smile in his voice. They are the most reasonable terms anyone has ever set for me. I agreed fast because they're right. She hung up without responding to that. Thursday arrived before she was ready, which was how all the hard things always arrived. He was waiting outside the medical building at 9:54, which meant he had been there longer than that. He was wearing a dark jacket, no tie, less composed than she'd ever seen him outside of the night. Everything fell apart. He looked like a man who had spent 48 hours not sleeping and wasn't bothering to pretend otherwise. You came, he said, like he'd been afraid she wouldn't. I said I would. They went inside. The waiting room was full, standard, routine. The receptionist typed in Sophia's name, looked past her at Dante, and said pleasantly, Will the father be joining you today? The word father hit the air, and Dante went absolutely still behind her. Not tense, not calculating. Still the way men go still when something reaches through all their armor and touches the real thing underneath. Yes, Sophia said. She didn't plan it. She said it the way she kept saying things she didn't plan, because her mouth had decided that some truths were too tired of being managed. They sat, side by side, not touching. The 4 inches between them were doing a lot of work. Thank you, he said quietly, for what you said to the receptionist. Don't read into it. I'm just, he stopped. Thank you. 3 minutes of magazine pages she didn't read. Then he said low and suddenly different. There's a man at the far end of the room. He came in when we did. He hasn't looked at his phone once. She went cold. Yours? No. Who? Someone's been having me followed for 3 weeks. His name is Vincent Caro. He said it without alarm, which was worse than alarm. He's looking for leverage. He doesn't know about you yet. But Sophia, he saw us walk in together. Handle it, she said. And then before he could look smug about her using his language, and then tell me everything about Vincent Caro. He stood, walked calmly to the reception desk, said something she couldn't hear. Then he turned and looked directly at the man across the room. Just looked. One sustained, completely unblinking look that carried the entire weight of 38 years of being someone people crossed the street to avoid. The man stood up and left. Dante came back and sat down. Sophia Marlowe, the nurse in the doorway. They stood, they followed, and neither of them was prepared for what happened in that room. Dr. Chen was efficient and warm and utterly unimpressed by the controlled intensity of the man standing behind her patient's left shoulder. She ran the standard checks, asked the standard questions, and then reached for the ultrasound equipment. Do you want to see her? She asked Sophia. He hasn't seen her yet, Sophia said. Factual, deliberate, a decision made out loud. Dr. Chen turned the monitor. The sound filled the room. That heartbeat, fast and strong and unmistakably, ferociously alive Arya's heartbeat, which Sophia had heard at every appointment for months and had never once, not a single time, gotten used to. She heard Dante make a sound. It was almost nothing, a short, compressed exhale through the nose, the kind that escapes before you can stop it when something hits you, somewhere you forgot was exposed. She turned and looked at him. She couldn't help it. He was staring at the monitor. His jaw was locked. But his eyes were doing something that had nothing to do with his jaw, something that had nothing to do with strategy or control or the careful management of a world that ran on power and fear. He was seeing his daughter for the first time. Strong heartbeat, Dr. Chen said. Excellent position. She's been practicing her breathing movements beautiful at 34 weeks. She looked at Dante. Any questions, Dad? Dante Ricci, who always had the words, who had walked into every room of his life, knowing exactly what to say to get exactly the outcome he wanted, opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He tried again. Is she... His voice was completely different, stripped of everything. Is she healthy? She's doing beautifully, Dr. Chen said. Sophia looked away from his face because looking at it directly felt like walking into something private that even she didn't have the right to witness. She looked at the monitor instead, at Arya, at the life she had been building alone for 8 months that was in the most complicated and irreversible way possible, no longer entirely alone. In the parking lot, he said, "She's perfect." "She's healthy," Sophia said, the wall version. "She is perfect," he said again quietly, not arguing, insisting on precision. She didn't fight him on that one. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, and his tone changed in a way that changed the temperature of the air between them. She turned to look at him. "Caro doesn't just know we came in together." His voice was controlled, but she could hear what was underneath it. Now she was getting better at that again, hearing underneath. "He had a man in the parking lot. Someone photographed us walking to the car. Within 12 hours, he'll know your name. How long until you can stop him? A week, maybe less. And until then, I need you somewhere secure." He held her gaze. "I know how that sounds. I know what you're going to say." "I'm going to say yes," she said. He stopped. "Because she is what matters, and she doesn't care about making a point," Sophia said. "I do, but she doesn't. So yes, 1 week, the Mercer apartment. And you tell me everything about Caro right now in the car on the way back." He nodded. "Everything," he said. "I promise." She searched his face. "I know you don't believe that yet," he said. "I'm going to show you instead of asking you to believe it." "Start talking," she said. "Car, now." They walked toward the car. Neither of them saw the man on the rooftop across the street lower his camera. Neither of them saw him check the photo on his screen, 2 figures, one unmistakably pregnant, and type a fast message with his thumb. The message went to a phone in an office 3 miles away. Vincent Caro read it, leaned back in his chair, and smiled the slow, deliberate smile of a man who had just found exactly what he'd been looking for. "There it is," he said to no one. "There's the thing he can't afford to lose." He picked up his phone, dialed. "Find out everything about the woman," he said. "Full background. Tonight." He paused. "And when you find it, and you will find it, call me before you do anything else. I want to handle this one personally." He hung up. And somewhere in his expression, in the particular quality of his smile, was the look of a man who already suspected that what he was about to find was going to be even better than leverage. He just didn't know how much better. Not yet. 11:47 that night. Sophia was standing in the Mercer kitchen when her phone rang with a number she hadn't seen in 3 years. She stared at it for 4 full seconds. Then she answered, "Uncle Ray." Not a greeting, a landing. "I need you to listen to me, and I need you to stay calm." Raymond Marlowe's 61 smoker's voice, the measured tone of a man delivering information he wishes he didn't have. "Caro's people found you. Full ID address. Everything." She already knew that part. "What else?" "Sophia." "What else, Ray?" A pause that lasted too long. "When they dug into your background, past you, past Dante, all the way back, they found your father." She sat down, not because she chose to, because her legs simply stopped cooperating with the instruction to remain standing. Thomas Marlowe, her father, who had walked out the door when she was 19 with a single suitcase and the particular absence of explanation that only people who know exactly what they're doing can maintain, who she had spent 10 years assuming was somewhere unreachable. "He's with Caro," she said. Her voice came out flat and precise, which was what her voice did when everything else was too loud. "He's been Caro's right hand for 11 years. 11 years. She pressed her free hand against her stomach. Arya turned over slow and oblivious and warm, and Sophia held on to that, the warmth of it, the certainty of it, like a rope. "He wants a meeting," Ray said. "He called me an hour ago. He says if you sit down with him, he can pull Caro back. Call off the whole thing." "And you believe him?" Silence. "Oh, no. Ray?" "I believe he's in a position to do it," Ray said carefully. "Whether his intentions are, that's what I can't tell you." She hung up. She called Dante. He answered before the first ring finished. "Something happened." "Yes." She told him everything, clean and fast, no emotion she couldn't afford to spend right now. Thomas Marlowe, 11 years. The offer, the meeting. When she finished, the silence on his end lasted exactly 4 seconds. "Your father didn't stumble into Caro's organization," Dante said. His voice was controlled in the particular way it got when he was managing something that he was furious about. Caro sent him to you. The meeting offer is bait. He wants both of us in a room together so he can measure how much you matter to me. I know. So you're not taking it. I'm taking it, she said, Sophia. He is my father. The words came out with a precision that left no room for negotiation. Whatever else he is, whatever he's done, and if there is any real piece of that offer, any of it, and I don't take it, then I spend the rest of my life explaining to Arya why I didn't try. She paused. So I'm taking it, and you're coming with me, and together we walk in knowing it's probably a trap, and we do it anyway, because the alternative is waiting in this apartment for Caro to decide when he moves. A long silence on his end. There's something I need to tell you, he said. She closed her eyes briefly. Of course there is. Your father didn't come to Caro's organization randomly. He stopped. She heard him choose the words. 11 years ago, I facilitated a meeting between Caro's people and a man named Thomas who was looking for work. I didn't know his last name. I didn't know he had a daughter. I found out 6 months ago when I was searching for you, and I traced every connection I could find, and the thread led back to me. The kitchen was very quiet. You introduced my father to the man threatening my daughter, she said. Yes. 6 months ago. Yes. And in the diner 4 nights ago, you said you were done keeping things from me. Sophia, I need you to leave me alone for the rest of tonight, she said, completely level, the most dangerous version of her voice. I will be at whatever location you choose tomorrow morning, at whatever time you say. But tonight you stay out of my head. Understood. Don't send anyone to check on me. I won't. Don't call. I won't. She hung up. She sat for a long time. Then she did the thing she had not done in 3 years. She dialed the number Ray had given her. It rang 3 times. She prepared herself for voicemail, for silence, for the particular absence of a man who had made choosing himself into a lifestyle. He picked up on the 4th ring. Sophia. Thomas Marlowe, older and rougher and still, and this was what she'd been afraid of, the thing underneath everything, still recognizably her father. I wasn't sure you'd call. Give me one true thing, she said. Just one. Can you do that? A long breath. I've known about you and Dante for 2 years. I never told Caro. A pause. I know that doesn't fix anything. No, she said. It doesn't. She looked at the wall in front of her and thought about Marco, about an envelope of cash delivered by a stranger, about Arya's heartbeat on a monitor, and a man going absolutely still when he heard it. I'll be there tomorrow. Dante comes with me. I know. If this is a trap, if any part of this is a setup, I will make sure that every person in every organization that Caro has ever done business with knows exactly what you did to your own daughter. Silence on his end. Then you sound like your mother. I'll take that as a compliment. She paused. Don't be late. She hung up. She sat in the middle of the apartment with both hands on her stomach, and she talked to Arya the way she always did, silently, in the private language of a mother and a child who had learned each other in the dark. She told her it was going to be okay. She told her she was going to fight for her in every room she walked into. She told her the truth. She was scared, but she was going anyway. By 3 in the morning, Caro's man had delivered a full file on Thomas Marlowe to his employer. Caro read it in 20 minutes. Then he read it again. Because buried on page 4 in a detail so small it might have been overlooked by anyone less thorough, was something that transformed Sophia Marlowe from a useful piece of leverage into something far more significant. Something that made Vincent Caro set down the file and stare at the wall for a full minute, then pick up his phone and say, cancel everything tomorrow. I'm handling the Marlowe meeting personally. Siebert's on 4th. Private dining room, 9 o'clock. Sophia arrived first, which she had planned. She wanted to be in the room before Dante, before her father, before anyone who might interpret her presence as arriving under someone else's terms. She sat down at the table and she put her hands flat on the surface and she breathed, and when the door opened and Dante came in, she looked at him, the way you look at someone you have made a complicated peace with, not all the way there but closer than yesterday. He sat beside her, not across from her. Beside. She noticed. She didn't say anything about it. Thomas Marlowe came in at 9:02. He stopped when he saw her, the same stop that Dante had done in the diner doorway. The stop you make when you see something you weren't fully prepared for despite knowing exactly what to expect. He looked older than she'd imagined. Thinner. The lines in his face were the lines of a man who had spent 11 years making choices he couldn't undo. He saw her stomach, and he stopped breathing for a visible second. Then he sat down, hands on the table, visible, deliberate. "Sophia," his voice. "Sit," Dante said from her left. One word. It reorganized the entire room. Thomas sat. She looked at her father. She made herself look without flinching, without the distance she'd been rehearsing all night. She looked at the man who had raised her and left her and spent the last 11 years inside the organization that was threatening her daughter. "One true thing at a time," she said. "Start." Thomas looked at Dante once, then back at her. "Caro isn't planning leverage anymore." He said it straight, no buildup. He moved past that last night. He wants a complete and permanent stand down from Dante, every operation, every territory, everything. And the guarantee he's chosen is Arya. The room temperature dropped. She felt Dante go still beside her. The particular stillness that meant he was calculating something extremely fast. "He threatened my daughter," Dante said, completely level. The most frightening sound she had ever heard in her life. "He communicated his intention to me last night," Thomas said, "which is why I called Ray. Which is why I'm in this room right now." He looked at Sophia. "I know what I am. I know what I have done. I'm not asking you to forgive any of it. But she is my granddaughter, and there are lines." "You're here because of Arya," Sophia said, "not me." Thomas flinched, small and genuine and completely unmistakable. "Both of you," he said. "I know I don't have the right." "You don't." She leaned forward. "What do you have that stops Caro?" He reached into his jacket. Dante's hand moved immediately, not to a weapon, but to Sophia's arm, one firm contact ready. Thomas withdrew a USB drive and set it on the table between them. 3 years, he said. Every account, every shell company, every transfer Caro has run through 4 countries that isn't supposed to exist. Names, amounts, dates, banks, recipients, everything. He looked at the drive. It's enough to end him permanently. Dante reached past her and picked it up. He turned it in his hand, looked at Thomas. "If this is real," Dante said, "Caro's entire infrastructure collapses." "It's real," Thomas didn't blink. "I've been building it for 2 years, since I found out about Sophia and what I had put her in the middle of without knowing." He looked at her. "I was building an exit, something that made Caro untouchable to anyone, including himself." "Why didn't you use it sooner?" Sophia said. "Because until 4 days ago, you were safe. You were hidden. There was nothing to trigger it." She sat with that. She hated how much sense it made. "You'll need to disappear," Dante said to Thomas. "Transactional, clean, new identity, new location, out of this city by tomorrow. You do not contact Sophia again, or unless she initiates. Those terms are not negotiable." Thomas looked at Sophia. She met his eyes, and she asked the question that had been burning through everything all morning. "Marco, did you know? Before it happened, did you know what Caro was going to do?" The silence that followed was the most honest thing Thomas Marlowe had offered in 11 years. "No," he said. "I found out the next day." A pause, and I almost walked into Caro's office and ended everything right there. He looked at his hands. "I didn't, and that is mine to carry." He looked back up. "I'm sorry, Sophia. I know that's not enough. I know it never will be." "No," she said, "it won't." She looked at him one last moment. "But I heard it. That's something." She stood up. The meeting was over. She could feel it in the air, the natural end of a thing that had needed to happen. Dante pocketed the drive. "Tomorrow," he said to Thomas. Thomas nodded. She walked to the door, stopped with her hand on the frame, did not turn around. "Take care of yourself," she said, "wherever you end up." She walked out. They were in the car before either of them spoke. 4 blocks of silence, and then she said, "He looked like someone who stopped sleeping a long time ago." "Yes. I don't forgive him." She needed to say it, to make it real in the air. Not for Marco, not for any of it. "I know. But she's going to ask me someday who he was." Her hand moved to her stomach, and I'd rather she have the choice of knowing than have me make that decision for her. "That's the right call," Dante said quietly. She looked at him. At his profile, his jaw, the hand steady on the wheel. "What happens to Caro now?" "I make 3 calls in the next hour. By tonight, the drive is in the hands of people who have been trying to dismantle him for 3 years. By tomorrow morning, Caro has problems that make us completely irrelevant to him." He glanced at her. It's over. The threat is over. She let that land. Then Dante. She said it carefully. When this is done, when Caro is handled, and my father is gone and Arya is safe. She turned to look at him directly. What do we do? He was quiet, not avoiding the question, sitting with it. We try, he said finally, just like that. Not just like that. He pulled the car over the way he'd done outside the medical building. The deliberate stop, the turn to face her. I know what I cost you. I know what I cost Marco. I know that I made every wrong decision when it mattered most, and I know you built something real and strong without me, and I know you don't need me. He held her gaze. But I am asking for Arya, and for whatever is still between us to be allowed to try to be something different than what I was. Not perfect, not transformed overnight, different in the ways that actually matter. He looked at her with the full weight of everything he was, which was enormous and complicated, and still underneath all of it, real. I am asking Sophia, not telling. She looked at him for a long time. She is what leads everything, she said. Arya first, every time. Every time, he said, without exception. And no more managed truths, no more decisions made about my life. Never again. And if you break either of those, you disappear, he said, and I won't find you, I know. He kept her gaze. I won't break them. She looked out the windshield, at the city moving and indifferent and completely unchanged by anything that had happened in that private dining room this morning. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. Okay, we try. She said it like she was stepping onto ice she couldn't see the thickness of. But Dante, I need you to understand something before we do. Tell me. I am not who I was when we were together before. She said it clearly. Absolutely. That woman waited. That woman swallowed things. That woman hoped quietly and didn't push back when pushing back was exactly what the situation needed. She turned to face him. I'm the woman who left, who raised herself back up from nothing, who looked you in the face in a diner and didn't collapse despite everything she was feeling. Her voice was bedrock. That is who you are dealing with, not a softer version, the actual one. He looked at her, and what moved across his face was not intimidation or calculation. It was something that had survived 7 months of searching, something that had been waiting with unusual patience for a man like him for exactly this. I know, he said. That woman, exactly that woman, is who I've been looking for. He reached forward and placed his hand over hers, not gripping, not claiming, just there, present. I found her. She looked down at his hand. She did not move hers away. She was born on a Thursday, 39 weeks, 2 days ahead of the original estimate because Arya Marlowe Ricci had apparently inherited her father's unwillingness to wait for anyone else's timeline. Sophia's water broke at 4:20 in the morning in the Mercer Street apartment while she was standing at the kitchen counter drinking water she hadn't slept enough to need. No dramatic crash, no movie moment, just a quiet, absolute announcement from her daughter that the waiting was over. She called Dante before she called the hospital. She didn't analyze why. She just did it. He answered on the first ring. She heard him already awake or never quite asleep, which with Dante were often the same thing. Sophia, it's time, she said, silence for exactly 1 second. I'm on my way. I haven't packed the last. I'm on my way. He was there in 11 minutes, which meant he had been close already. She had stopped asking about that. He came through the door she'd left unlocked and found her in the kitchen, still holding the water glass, her other hand pressed against her stomach, breathing through something that was still more pressure than pain, but moving in a clear and definite direction. He stopped in the doorway. He looked at her. She looked at him. Hi, she said, which was the most ordinary thing she had said to him since the night the coffee pot shattered, and they both felt the weight of that ordinariness, the specific, enormous weight of two people who have been through extraordinary things, finally standing in the same room with nothing left to manage. Hi, he said back. Then because neither of them had time for the rest of it right now. Hospital bag, counter. He grabbed it. She took his arm, not because she needed to, she told herself, but because the floor was doing something slightly unpredictable and she was 8.5 months pregnant. And this was simply the pragmatic choice, and they walked out the door. The hospital was 20 minutes away. In the car, between contractions that were still manageable, she held his hand. Not romantically, not with any declaration attached to it. She held his hand the way you hold something solid when the ground is shifting underneath you, and he let her hold it without saying a single word about it. In the delivery room, Dante was exactly who he had promised to be. He didn't take over. He didn't make decisions. He didn't command or control or fill the room with the overwhelming gravity he carried everywhere else. He stood exactly where she put him, to her left, close enough to be present, far enough back to give Dr. Chen space, and he talked to her. Quietly, continuously. Her name, her breathing, "You're doing it, I've got you, that's it, keep going." She had expected him to be frightening in that room. She had expected the force of him to be too much to crowd her, to remind her of everything she'd been trying to keep her daughter safe from. He was the most frightened person in the room. She could see it. Underneath every quiet word and every steady presence, he was terrified. Not of the danger, not of the pain she was in, though that was clearly costing him something. Terrified in the particular way of a man who has spent his entire life controlling outcomes, confronting the one situation where control is completely and permanently beside the point. "You're shaking," she told him between contractions. "I'm not." "Your hands are shaking, Dante." A pause. "A little," he admitted. "Good," she said. And then a contraction hit, and she gripped his hand hard enough that she was briefly concerned about the bones in it, and he didn't make a sound. He just held on. At 6:53 in the morning, Arya Marlowe Ricci arrived. She came in loud, immediately furiously, impressively loud, a sound that filled the delivery room and bounced off the walls and landed in the center of Sophia's chest like something her body had been waiting her entire life to feel. Dr. Chen placed her on Sophia's chest. Sophia looked at her daughter. Her daughter looked back. Everything that had happened in the last 8 months, the diner, the cold car, the 400-square-foot apartment, the Mercer key, the doctor's office, Thomas Marlowe across a table with a USB drive, and a lifetime of guilt every sleepless night. And every morning, she'd stood up anyway. All of it reorganized itself around this specific weight on her chest, around this specific face looking at her with the slightly indignant expression of someone who has just arrived somewhere and has opinions about it. She had dark hair, Dante's jaw, Sophia's eyes, her own particular self already entirely present. "Hi," Sophia said, barely a sound. "Hi, baby girl. I've been waiting so long to see you." She heard Dante make the sound from the delivery room doorway, the same sound from the waiting room, the same compressed exhale, the same involuntary response of a man hit in a place he forgot was exposed. Except bigger this time, entirely bigger. She looked up. He was standing 2 feet away, with his hand pressed flat against his mouth and his eyes completely full, and a face that had nothing left on it except the raw and unmanaged truth of what he was feeling. "Come here," she said. He moved to her side. He looked at Arya. Arya, 6 minutes old and already opinionated, turned her head slightly in the direction of his voice when he said her name. Arya. Just that, just her name, and his voice was not the voice of the man who commanded rooms and made entire organizations step carefully around him. It was the voice of someone beginning, just beginning. From the absolute start of something he didn't have the first real idea how to do and was going to do anyway, completely and without reservation. He reached forward, slow and careful, and touched her hand. Her fingers, impossibly small, impossibly perfect, curled around one of his. And Dante Ricci, who had never in his life been brought to his knees by anything, was brought to his knees by that. He didn't say anything for a long time. Neither did Sophia. There wasn't anything left to say that wasn't already in the room. Later, 2 weeks later, when Arya had learned that screaming at 2 in the morning produced immediate results, and Sophia had discovered that Dante showing up with coffee at 7 a.m. was something she had apparently decided to allow. She sat in the Mercer apartment and thought about everything that had led to this particular Thursday morning. Caro's organization had collapsed in 4 days. Dante had made his 3 calls and the drive had done everything Thomas promised it would do. And Vincent Caro was currently navigating the kind of legal and financial catastrophe that left no energy for anything else. Thomas was gone, new name, new city, a phone number in Sophia's contacts that she had not yet used and might not for a long time, and might someday. That was her choice to make when she was ready to make it. Deb had come to the hospital. She had held Arya and cried and told Dante to his face that he had one chance to get this right and that she would be watching. Dante had looked at her with complete seriousness and said, "I know. Deb had nodded once and decided apparently that this was sufficient. Marco was still gone. That didn't change. Grief doesn't get resolved. It gets carried differently, over time redistributed into the life that keeps moving forward, whether you're ready or not. Sophia had learned that. She was still learning it. She thought she would be learning it for the rest of her life, and she thought that was right. That was what he deserved, to be carried, not left behind. Dante knocked on her door. He always knocked now. Every time. She opened it. He was holding Arya, who had apparently decided that Thursday morning was a good time to be awake and look at everything. And he was holding her with the careful, slightly overwhelmed competence of a man who had spent 2 weeks learning something he had never done before in his life and was taking it with complete seriousness. He had canceled 4 meetings this week to be here. She knew because his assistant had called her not to complain, just to confirm, and she had said nothing but felt something shift in her chest that she was still working on naming. "She wants you," he said. "She always wants me. She's 2 weeks old." She was looking at the door. "She can't see that far yet." "She knew," he said with absolute conviction. Sophia took her daughter. Arya immediately settled the particular way she settled when she was where she wanted to be, and looked up at Sophia with those eyes. Those eyes that were going to be exactly her own color, Dr. Chen had said. Entirely her own. "She has your stubbornness already," Dante said. He was leaning against the doorframe, and he looked like something she hadn't seen from him before. Relaxed, not controlled, not strategic, not composed, just there. In the ordinary morning of an ordinary Thursday, just there. "She has very good taste," Sophia said. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Real and unguarded. "Can I come in?" "You're already in. I'm in the doorway." She stepped back. He came in. He sat on the couch she hadn't chosen in the apartment she'd moved into under protest and had quietly over 6 weeks made entirely her own. And Sophia sat beside him with Arya between them, this small, certain extraordinarily loud person who had arrived and immediately reorganized everything. And for the first time in a long time, she sat still and did not feel the need to run. "I want to say something," Dante said. He was looking at Arya. "And I want to say it right, so just let me." She waited. "I know what we are right now is not everything," he said. "I know we are 2 people with a daughter and a lot of history and a lot of work still to do, and I am not going to pretend that's simple." He turned to look at her, not with the force he usually brought to eye contact, with something quieter, something that had been earning itself for 8 months. "But I want you to know, I need you to know that whatever I was before I walked into that diner and saw you, I am not that man anymore. Not because Arya changed me, though she did. Because you changed me. Because watching what you built alone and how you stood and what you fought for, that changed me in ways I did not expect and cannot undo." He held her eyes, "And I don't want to undo them." Sophia looked at him. She looked at him the way she had looked at him in the diner doorway, fully without the distance she'd been maintaining, and this time she didn't look away. "I know," she said quietly. Yeah. She shifted Arya slightly in her arms. "I know, I can see it." A pause. "Don't make me say it all the way yet. Give me a little more time." "All the time you need." And Dante, "Yeah, you're going to be the good father." She said it clearly, without qualification. "You already are one. I can see that too." He looked at Arya, at the small fist wrapped around his finger, at the face that was already entirely its own thing, stubborn and curious and awake, in the particular way of someone who has decided that the world is interesting and she intends to pay attention to all of it. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure she never has any reason to doubt that," he said. "I know you are." "And you," he said, turning back to her, "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you don't either." She held his gaze. She let the words land. She let them be real. "Okay," she said. Just that. Okay. The same words she'd said in the car on the same ice she'd stepped out onto then, except this time she could feel that it was solid. Not perfect. Not without cracks or history or the weight of everything it had taken to get here. But solid. Arya looked up at both of them with the completely unimpressed expression of someone 6 weeks into her existence, who has already concluded that the adults around her are extremely emotional, and she personally intends to be very efficient about everything. And Sophia laughed. Genuinely, completely all the way, the kind of laugh that comes from somewhere past the grief and the fear and the 7 months of building and the coffee pot on the diner floor, and the three words that started all of this. Dante looked at her laughing, and he looked at his daughter looking at both of them, and he looked at the ordinary Thursday morning in an apartment in a city that had no idea what had happened inside it over the last 8 months, and something settled in him deep and final and quiet. He had spent 38 years deciding everything. He had spent 7 months searching for something he had lost. He had spent 6 weeks learning that the most important things, the things that actually mattered at the absolute bottom of everything, could not be controlled or commanded or secured by any resource he possessed. They could only be chosen and earned and shown up for every single morning in the ordinary and unglamorous, in completely irreplaceable minutes of a life that was finally actually his. Arya reached up and grabbed a fistful of her mother's hair and held on with the magnificent, unreasonable strength of someone who knows exactly what she wants. Sophia winced. Dante reached over and gently, carefully freed the strand. Their hands touched. Neither of them moved away. Outside, the city moved through its Thursday morning ordinary and enormous cars and people, and the particular light of a winter sun coming through a window, indifferent to everything that had changed in the room behind it. Inside, Sophia Marlowe held her daughter and felt for the first time, without qualification, without wall or condition or careful management, that she was exactly where she had fought her way back to. Not the life she had before, not the life she had imagined. The life that was actually hers. The one she had earned with every hard choice, and every morning she'd stood back up, and every moment she had refused to let fear be the final word. She had started this story running. She ended it standing still. And that was the victory that no amount of power or money or influence had ever been able to give Dante Ricci, and that no amount of fear had ever been able to take from her. Arya made a small, decisive sound. They both looked at her immediately. She looked back at them with complete authority, already running things, already home.